the food system, I think you can help create a new and better world. Because as I said last night, I think we're at one of those points in human history of great transformation. And during times of great transformation, there are great risks and many challenges. But there are also great opportunities to move forward to something that's fundamentally better. And I think you and groups like you across the country have an opportunity to do that. You have an opportunity to create a food system that meets the needs of the present, all of the people of the present, that provides healthy food that's accessible and affordable to everyone. Not the cheap food policy that we've had over the last 50 or 60 years. The cheap food policy did not feed the hungry. We have a higher percentage of hungry people in the United States today than we had in 1960, and the same thing is true of the world after 50 years of industrializing agriculture. It's not cheap food. And those people that can afford to eat, particularly those people on the lower income scale, the food that they eat is not making them healthier. In fact, it is making them sick. You have an opportunity to create a sustainable food system because our current food system is simply not sustainable. Sustainable food system will meet the needs of the present, but it'll leave equal or better opportunities for the future, and you're involved in that process here by taking care of the land, rebuilding the natural productivity of the land so that you can produce healthy crops, healthy livestock, and healthy people, not just for this generation, but for all generations of the future. That's what sustainability is about. And you have an opportunity, and you're meeting that opportunity by coming together and working cooperatively and being involved in your communities, because it's not just about restoring the integrity of the land and maintaining the productivity of the land, but it's restoring the integrity of society, the productivity of society for the benefit of those of future generations. You can help demonstrate to the rest of the world the virtually unlimited possibilities for the improvement in the human quality of life when people come together and truly work together for the common good, rather than separate individually and compete with each other until they destroy the integrity of the commons, whether it's the natural commons or the commons of the community. When people come together and cooperate. But the tremendous opportunities that you have for success will not come without great risk. These times of transition, I said, are times of opportunity, but they're also times of risk. So I want to take some time and talk about the risk of success. What happens when cooperatives succeed? All too often, the success turns to failure. I spend most of my time, at least up to now, talking with people that are working in sustainable agriculture, mostly individual farmers that are organic farmers in all different areas. And I came up with one time the top 10 reasons that sustainable farmers, that farmers are farming for sustainability, fail. And on my list of top 10, I don't remember exactly where it ranked, as a reason for failure was success. That a farmer would start out in organic farming, they would become successful. You would learn how to grow the crops and start a CSA or sell to farmers markets or whatever, and there were more customers than they could supply. And so they would try to produce more, and they would raise prices or whatever, because they typically start pricing too cheap anyway. And then their markets would continue to grow. They would go beyond the farmer's market, the CSA, and start trying to supply restaurants. And then eventually the volume would get to the point where they try to go into wholesale markets. And pretty soon the operation would continue to grow, and it was too big for the family, and they would hire people and come in, and it would continue to grow to the point where they would basically forget why they started into sustainable farming to begin with. Because they got into it not to get rich, not to have a big operation, but for the quality of life. Someplace that they could make a decent living economically, but it was mainly about a place to raise a family, a place to be a part of the community, a place of connectedness with other like-minded people that shared their values. And it was a place where they could interact with nature, and they'd have time to experience nature by being outside and working in the fields or working in the garden or just walking through the fields. And after all of their success, they no longer had time or energy to spend with the family, and to spend with friends, and to spend within the community. They no longer could afford to go out and just listen to the birds sing, feel the breeze, whatever it was. They were too busy being successful. And I come up with that by being on programs with several successful farmers who would tell the story very similar to what I told. And I would ask others and they would say the same thing. What happens is when you start becoming successful and the operation begins to grow, then you say, okay, if I'm going to make this work, I have to become more efficient. And how do you become more efficient in the mindset of the world today? You say, well, I'm going to specialize, do fewer things so I can do them better. We'll divide up the labor so we have divisions of labor. On this one will do this and this will do this. We're going to standardize. We've got to write out a prescription of how everything's going to be done, a procedure for this, a procedure for that. We've got to get it all done on paper and get it right so it's standardized. And then we can consolidate control into larger operations because we've simplified, routinized the whole process. That's precisely the process, the strategies for industrialization. That's how we ended up with an agriculture where people can't make a living, where they don't have time to interact with communities, interact with families, where they can't afford to take care of the land. The success led people right back to the thing that they were trying to get away from. And their success, they ended up failing. And in many cases, they would also fail economically when their families would fall apart, when they simply become depressed, when they lost all enthusiasm for what they were doing. But even if they succeeded, they had turned into the thing that they started out to be different from. I see the same things in cooperatives that I saw in those farms. I can give you several examples within the U.S. The one that comes to mind most readily to me was the Missouri Farmers Association, MFA. I can still remember the radio jingle from when I was a kid. MFA, that's the farmers, that's the profit sharing way. All agreed, plain to see, it's the farmers' fruit. That was a jingle. And we used to go to the MFA, it was the exchange. And we'd take in our eggs, and we'd take in a cream, and we would buy our chicken feed, and we'd take in chickens. It was the exchange, they called it. They bought everything from farmers, even when it wasn't profitable, and we bought everything from them. And we were members of the MFA. And the members of the MFA were members of the community. And it was the pillar of our little town, Conway, Missouri. But over the years, the MFA did basically the same thing that I'm talking about. They become successful, put in a big feed mill, mainly in the petroleum business these days. MFA, oil stations, fast break stations all across Missouri. But they were no longer the farmer's friend. They'd become too successful. They turned into just another big corporate operation. And when the president of MFA retired in Missouri, Bud Frew was his name, I got a call from the newspaper. I was working in sustainable agriculture then, and they said, well, what do you think of Bud Frew? And I said, you know, Bud Frew might have been a successful person as president of MFA, but MFA is no longer what it was when I was a kid. It's no longer the farmer's friend. Because you see, Bud Frew had said, Missouri agriculture would be better off if we only had a few hundred farmers rather than the 100,000 or so that we have now in the small farmers. He said, we got to make agriculture more efficient. We only need a few large farms to do that. You see, the cooperative was about the benefit of the members. It was about for the benefit of all of those thousands of farmers that belonged to MFA. And over the years,